3, 2.
Okay, today is Monday, January 23rd. This is an Oscoda Township regular board meeting. We will call it to order at 6:45. We will start by the Pledge of Allegiance, please, if everybody could rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we start with roll call, please?
Mr. Cummings? Here. Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer? Absent. Mr. Palmer? Absent. Mr. Sutton? Here. Mr. Wurstabar?
Present.
Ms. Richards?
Here. All right. We do have a public presentation this evening. First on is the Corridor Improvement Authority presentation. And if you want to come to the podium. Rob, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll have you introduce yourself to the...
My name is Rob Bacciagalupi, but you can call me Rob.
Yeah, I'm not even going to attempt the last name, sorry. Mm-hmm.
I'm from Mission North over in Traverse City, and I have been asked to come here just to talk a little bit about the Corridor Improvement Authority tool and what it might be able to do for the township. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to, again, talk about what it is, how it's authorized, kind of the benefits of it, some of the responsibilities that come along with a Corridor Improvement Authority, and then kind of end up with just some thoughts about some next steps. So next slide, please. So the Corridor Improvement Authority tool is a legislative tool that the state had created some time ago. Back in 2018, they took a lot of the similar tax increment financing tools and put them all in one act. So that's why they're all kind of housed in Public Act 57 of 2018. But it's actually been around a little bit longer than that. Generally, the corridor improvement authorities are there to redevelop commercial corridors and promote economic growth. Those are kind of the two things that it's designed to do. My understanding is you used to have a downtown development authority. It's similar to that. There's some differences between that and the downtown development authority and some of the other tax increment financing tools out there, but it is similar. Next slide, please. This one will be hard to read, so I apologize for that, but suffice it to say that there are a lot of powers. There are a lot of things you can do with a Corridor Improvement Authority. The Corridor Improvement Authority can own property, can lease property, can manage property. You can make plans for your corridors. You can finance improvements to your corridors. Really, one of the main, I guess, things that you can do with a Corridor Improvement Authority, or really the things that most Corridor Improvement Authorities do across the state, are create plans for the corridors and then set up some sort of financing to help pay for those plans, help pay for the improvements. But there are a lot of other things that you can do along with that. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits of a Corridor Improvement Authority are that, as I just mentioned, there are broad powers that CIAs have. I'll call them CIAs for short. They do have the ability to generate revenue through various sources, but the main tool that most communities use is tax increment financing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later on. You have the ability to borrow funds, though a lot of communities will, as opposed to having their Corridor Improvement Authority borrow the funds, a lot of times what they'll do is they will be the ones to borrow the funds and have it paid back by a quarter improvement authority, largely because municipalities like a township, you probably have a better credit rating than a brand new quarter improvement authority, so you can probably get a better deal on bonds. So, but nonetheless, quarter improvement authorities can borrow funds. And by the way, all of these things are only with the blessing of the township board. So it's not like, you create it and they can kind of go off and do their own thing. You as the board would have control over, over what they're doing. Another benefit that I heard through the EIC discussions that might be of interest is the development district liquor licenses. This is a special liquor license that the Liquor Control Commission makes available to entities such as quarter improvement authorities and also other entities like DDAs. So that's a benefit to having a quarter improvement authority if you're short on those. And then just generally, it is a board that can kind of focus on the corridor. Now you already have an EIC and they're kind of doing that already, but if you didn't, this would be a new entity that could, again, pay attention to the corridors in your community. So next slide. So along with the benefits, there of course are responsibilities that you would have to adhere to. It goes without saying, board members would take a constitutional oath of office. The meetings like these meetings are subject to Open Meetings Act. There are reporting requirements, and particularly if you use tax increment financing, there are additional reporting requirements that the Department of Treasury, the Michigan Department of Treasury, requires you to do every year, so that the public can, anybody at the public can look up what the Quarter Improvement Authority is using those tax dollars for. There's a requirement to hold 2 informational meetings annually. This is really designed mostly for property owners. You kind of invite property owners in and just say, hey, we just want to let you know what we are doing with the funds that we're collecting. This is what we're doing, just to make sure that they're kept up to speed with the activities of the Quarter Improvement Authority. So, and I already mentioned the reporting to the Department of Treasury. So next slide. This is one of the differences between a Quarter Improvement Authority and a Downtown Development Authority. The Quarter Improvement Authority tool is really designed for corridors, as the name suggests, and it kind of lends itself pretty well to the business districts that you have in Oscoda Township. These are some of the requirements that you have to adhere to. For example, you have to be none of the district can be outside of 500 feet from an arterial or collector street. It's got to have at least 10 contiguous parcels. It's got to be at least 5 acres. There's some other requirements about kind of a history of the property. This third bullet, more than half of the existing ground floor square footage is classified as commercial real estate property under the General Property Tax Act. So that one might, that one might create some additional investigation in some of the corridors that we're looking at. There are some zoning requirements which you actually adhere to very nicely because you recently redid your master plan and zoning ordinance, and you're in good shape on that front, so that should not be a hindrance. Has to be served by water and sewer. So anyway, there are a number of things that you have to look at in terms of making sure that you adhere to the requirements of the act when you create a district. Next slide. So this is just a map of your State Street district, and that first map is actually a very old street map, but it shows the arterials and collectors in the kind of black and the dashed line, and I think the point there is simply that on the next page I'm going to show a map of where this district could go, and the good news is that you're in good shape with you've got good coverage being within 500 feet of those two types of streets, you can cover a lot of ground in your State Street district. The second map, of course, is your kind of your zoning map, and it just shows that you've got the proper zoning in that State Street district for a corridor improvement district. And then the next slide, please. So this one just kind of conceptualizes where a corridor improvement authority could go. Originally, we were kind of just looking at the State Street area, but then we started to look beyond that to include kind of a US 23 corridor and the F41 corridor. They're just shown in different colors. So you could, the law would allow you, for example, to create 3 different corridor improvement authorities, but you don't have to do that. You can just have one, that one board that oversees that whole area. So you've got that flexibility geographically. Next slide, please. These are just some examples of other corridor improvement authorities around the state. Most of them happen to be in the Lansing area. Delta Township is one, that's near Lansing. Meridian Township also has a corridor improvement authority, in addition to a downtown development authority in a different part of town, so they have both. Next slide, please. And then in Grand Rapids, you've got, here's a community, one municipality with 6 different corridor improvement authorities. So they have 6 of them. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you've got one corridor improvement authority that straddles 3 different communities. And that would be the Michigan Avenue Corridor Improvement Authority, which includes parts of Lansing, Lansing Township, and East Lansing. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how you can fashion a corridor improvement authority. Next slide, please. A couple other requirements. You're supposed to have expedited local permitting and an inspection process in the development area. You probably already qualify for that. This language, that second bullet, comes right out of the law. It says you've got to modify your master plan to provide walkable facilities, sidewalks, and streetscapes, but you already have it in your plan, so you really don't have to modify anything. So you're in good shape there. Next slide, please. So in terms of the process of creating a corridor improvement authority, there are really 3 components of, there are 3 things you have to think about. One is creating the corridor improvement authority itself, creating the district, and then creating the board itself. That's one. Secondly, if you decide, okay, we're going to do that, but we're also going to use the tax increment financing tool, then you have to also create a tax increment financing plan that lays out how much you plan on collecting and what you plan on doing with those dollars. And then thirdly, you would have to create a development plan, which kind of goes into more detail as to how you would spend those dollars, what kind of projects they're for, and how much you're going to spend on them and when you're going to do them. So it's really kind of 3 different things. The good news is the process for doing all 3 of those is the same. So 99% of the time, a municipality will just do them all at once, because you don't want to go through this 2 or 3 times. It's quite a process to go through. If you want to think about it first, think about what you want to do. Do we want to use tax increment financing? Okay, if we are, then let's do it all at once and move forward. So some of those kind of process requirements include you've got some of the standard things, notifying the public through a notice in the paper, but you also have to do things like posting notices around the corridor, physical notices. You've got to notify through certified mail all of the taxing authorities, because they may be affected by the establishment of the corridor improvement authority. And Yeah, so there's a lot of, you have to notify all the property owners, every single property owner. So there's quite a bit of notification that goes on before you actually have a public hearing to get comment back on creating a corridor improvement authority. So again, you just want to make sure you've got your plan in place first before you actually go through that process. Once you do all that, then you can go ahead and approve it. Though I should mention the issue of if you do go in the direction of a tax increment financing plan, taxing authorities such as the county and the township itself have the ability to opt out. They have the ability to say, we're not going to participate. We're not going to let you capture our taxes in this district as you normally would. And because of that, it's very important to engage those taxing authorities early on and let them know, what you want to do, why you want to do it, and why it's beneficial, not just to the township, but ultimately to the county. So next slide, and I'll talk a bit about that in a sec. Next slide, please. There we go. So first, just a little bit about tax increment financing. I won't go into a great deal of detail about it. I understand you've got a brownfield authority, so you're probably somewhat familiar with it. But just generally speaking, first of all, why do you do it? This is probably the most important thing. Why do you use tax increment financing? You use it as a tool to spur private development in this case, a corridor. So the thinking behind using tax increment financing is the township is going to make a commitment to invest in these corridors one way or another, whether it be public improvements or things such as a facade grant program, which you're doing already, but you're making this commitment to invest in this corridor, and as a result, the private sector responds accordingly. And as the graph kind of conceptualizes, it starts out at a slow rate of growth and starts to increase as that promise to invest and then the actual investment takes place. The private sector responds, you get more development, and there's more to capture. So that's why you do it. And the thinking is, if it were not for this commitment to invest, you wouldn't have that kind of growth. So that's really important to really understand. But mechanically, how it happens is once you establish a tax increment financing plan, you establish a base year. Let's say it's 2024. Let's say you do this next year. And from that point forward, throughout the life of the plan, say the plan's 20 years, the regular kind of standard taxing authorities collect taxes only on that base year value, and the corridor improvement authority collects the increase tax value and uses that to fulfill that plan that you have approved to invest in the corridor. So that's kind of mechanically how it works. And then at the end of the life of the plan, then all the taxing authorities get to benefit from that additional tax revenue. Next slide, please. So I just included these, kind of to talk again about this idea of engaging the taxing authorities and making sure they understand that, yes, even though you're talking about capturing some taxes from, let's say the county would be probably the biggest one, there is a benefit long-term to the county. In this case, we were actually talking to the city of Marquette. I'm working on a DDA plan amendment up there right now. That's why I've got these graphs here. But we just wanted to show the city that, yes, we do want to create this new TIF district in the 3rd Street area, but you need to know that the 3rd Street area is already creating 6.9 times the amount of revenue per acre as is the rest of the city. And so that's on the per acre basis. And it's creating 2.1 times the amount of tax revenue on a per capita basis based on the population of that third street area. So these are just, the kinds of things that we like to point out when we use the TIF tool. Next slide, please. So obviously you'll need a board of trustees for the Corridor Improvement Authority. There are some requirements as to who can be on that Corridor Improvement Authority board, and includes the Township Chief Executive Officer is automatically on. Also, and then the Chief Executive Officer would actually appoint the rest of the members with confirmation of the Township Board. And they would have to be, at least half of the members have to have a property interest in the Corridor Improvement district or districts. So that can be a property owner, it can be a resident, it can be a tenant. So the definition of having a property interest is fairly broad. They've actually broadened it out over time. So that's one thing you've got to keep in mind. And then secondly, you've got to have one resident. Let's say you didn't get a resident from the Corridor Improvement Authority, you at least have to have one that's within half a mile of the district. Next slide, please. And again, I've already talked about this a little bit, but the Corridor Improvement Authority largely, ends up funding a lot of improvements or programs. Where do they get the money? Well, they can get the money from a lot of different sources, donations, revenue bonds that could be funded through, let's say, a piece of property they might end up buying and owning and managing and leasing out. Special assessments, and of course, tax increment financing is a big one, and then other funds authorized by law that can be grants, et cetera. So it's really quite broad as to where the funds can come from to make these projects happen. Next slide, please. So that's really kind of concludes the presentation. The next step would really be to just think about if this is a tool that you feel you might be able to use, and if so, how you would use it. Would you want to investigate the use of tax increment financing? And once you've kind of thought that through, made that decision, then then you would go through the process that I described before. And I don't think I mentioned, I think I had on the slide, but realistically, it's going to be probably like a 6-month process, maybe longer, just to make sure you've got time built in there to do the investigative work that you need to do, and then engage the taxing authorities to hear what they have to say, and make sure they feel as comfortable as they can feel with what you're trying to do. I had a bullet that I must have just blown by, but one of the things that you end up doing when you write these plans is identifying the programs that you want to, the projects and programs that you want to do, putting a number to them, and then prioritizing them, much like you would do with a master plan. But then you have to do the math, and figure out, okay, how much is this going to cost? And then you try to run the numbers. How much taxes can we generate? How much other revenue can we generate? And you might end up doing that a few times before you come up with something that you like. So that tends to take a little bit of time. Are there any questions, any thoughts, questions for me?
Board, I guess I have one. You mentioned that you can look at a couple different separate corridor improvement within one area. What would be or one encompassing, what would be the benefit of having the separate different plans in each one? Or I guess why would you want to do 3 if you could just do 1?
I would say I could kind of see why Grand Rapids did it, because it's such a large city and they have, perhaps different demographics within each of those
Right.
neighborhoods. But I think here it would make the most sense to have one.
Right, because like you might have like different goals and objectives based on the art district or the whatever district or, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then we do have an LDFA, you know, at the Airport Authority now. And we did, as you're aware, have a DDA. But in here it says, on the next steps, decide why you're creating, do you want to borrow and or use TIF funds? So are you saying instead of using the growth, we would borrow money to start that? And who would you borrow it from and how would you pay it back?
Yeah, sorry, that is a little confusing. I say that because if you aren't going to do TIF, but you are going to borrow, and again, you could do like a revenue bond if you were going to buy a bunch of property and generate revenue, you would still need to do the development plan. You just wouldn't need to do the tax increment financing plan. So that's why it's important to just ask the question, do you want to borrow? Would you ever borrow? It's really, and my suggestion is always to, you know, put as much as you can in the plan. It doesn't mean that you're going to do it necessarily, because everything would have to go back to the Township Board eventually anyway for approval, but that way you're not, you know, going back 3 years later and having to revise the plan to add in borrowing, for example.
Right, because amending a plan is very involved as well, I remember with the DDA. And then in regard to the taxing jurisdictions being able to opt out, you know, we have the library, we would have, you know, all those different places. Wouldn't it be, I mean, you said to have those dialogue to begin with, wouldn't it be important to know, I mean, if they're right off the get-go going to say, no, we're opting out, we know that we don't have that revenue, so that would really limit maybe the ability of what this improvement could do for us. So would it be a benefit to talk to them before we got too far down the road?
Definitely, yeah.
In regard, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it would be possibly good to have some idea of what you want to do, and then also why you want to do it, because again, I think the initial reaction generally, just from what I've seen around the state, particularly from counties, is no, you know, we don't want to do that because largely counties are fiscally stressed, but sometimes you can, you know, turn them around, you know, not all the times, granted, but sometimes you can turn that opinion around if, you know, you can make the case that this is, you know, it's good for the economy in Oscoda, which ultimately is good for the economy in Iosca County, and, you know, so. But yes, you're absolutely right. It'd be good to talk to the taxing authorities first, and particularly the county. It's all of the taxing authorities have to actively take action to opt out, except for the library. They are automatically opted out, so they would have to take action to opt in. Okay. So just a little quirk of the law. And
it's just growth. It's not like we're looking to take all the tax revenue. It's just the growth from when it starts in 2024 to the next. So those taxing entities still get revenue from the taxpayers, but the growth goes into a separate fund. And
yes,
I think that's important to note.
That is important to note, and there's also the possibility of revenue sharing. Some communities have struck deals with their partner taxing authorities to say, okay, we'll give you the first 1% of growth and we'll take the rest. Meridian Township's DDA has kind of a different deal where they're going to share the revenue from a particular project with everybody else, but they're just going to keep everything beyond that. So you can do things like that when you talk to your taxing authorities, if they are concerned about, you know, maintaining some sort of, you know, increase in revenue. That is an option that you can look at, is sharing revenue, sharing increased revenue.
Right, those were my questions. Did any other board members have any questions for Rob?
I do.
Okay.
So you mentioned on the CIA geography slide that you were looking at the State Street, US 23, and the F41 as corridors. My question was that, do we need to keep those corridors contiguous? Or do they need to be Or can they be,
They do need to
skip?
be, they do need to be contiguous. Yeah,
Okay.
if you're going to have one corridor improvement authority, yes, they do have to be contiguous.
all right,
I mean, the old DDA district did go out F41 and it stopped at the intersection of Cedar Lake Road. But the good thing with this corridor improvement is we could go south into Saville Township, correct, if they were interested?
You could. You could, and you know, though I thought about that, the way that it happens is, you know, you would take action to create the corridor improvement authority, and then Oscoda Township would take a separate action creating, essentially, you know, creating its corridor improvement authority that is the same, but then you have to decide, you know, how many members you get and how many members they get. So
Gotcha.
you have to have that discussion. But yes, you can do that.
and they would end up having to meet at the border because you need it to be contiguous?
Yes, yeah.
Very good.
So that would work pretty well if they're,
Yeah, with the way our downtown is set up, I would say so. But, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay, so moving on then to agenda additions. Do we have any agenda additions this evening? Yeah, we had talked maybe about a board appointment, but we're going to hold off on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Okay, all right. Hearing none then. We are at our first public comment section. We have two public comment sections on the agenda. The first public comment section is specifically reserved for items that are on the agenda. So it has to be on the agenda. It can be an item that's on other or informational for that matter, but it has to be on the agenda. You do need to fill out a comment card and you're limited to 4 minutes. We do have a second public comment section at the end of the meeting. And again, same time limit of 4 minutes, but it can be on any topic. So that being said, do we have any comment cards for the first public comment?
I do not have any.
Okay, did anybody miss filling out one? That's like, oh my God, I gotta talk? All right, okay. I know because we were a little bit crazy when we, delayed start and stuff. So, okay, hearing none, then we are going to move on to the consent agenda. First on, we have approval of the minutes. We have regular meeting minutes from January 9th. I had sent a couple corrections just for some motions that were made to Josh this afternoon. He sent those out. I don't know if everybody had time to review that. But any other comments or corrections there? All right, hearing none, we have the special meeting minutes from January 16th. Were there any comments or questions there? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move to finance. We have payment of bills. First is the prepaid from January 12th. The amount on that is $584.14. Were there any questions or comments on that? Great. Then we move to prepaid January 17th. The amount on that is $93,040. Any questions or comments on that? Right. Then we have a prepaid January 19th. The amount on that is $10,785.31. Any comments or questions on that?
I do, but it's not specifically about this one, but rather that in the first three, I didn't see a reimbursement that had been submitted by Melinda for mileage, and I was thinking that it should have come up in one of those prepaids. Or did that, or did you not have that?
Is that tomorrow's run, Josh?
Yeah, that'll be the board.
Coming in tomorrow, so that
Yeah.
that's not
So
this
it's a-
one, but
right.
the
It's
next
on the
one.
24th.
So it's on the 24th, the next
So
one.
we'll print them tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good then on the January
Thank you.
19th?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have a check run for January 24th. The amount on that is $3,144.58. Is there any questions or comments on that? All right, and then we have the C2R2 checking report. Any questions on that? And last but not least, the fire truck purchase check report. Comments on that? All right. With that, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, is there support?
Support, second?
All right. There's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Sutton to approve the consent agenda as presented. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wishbar?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. All right, moving on, we have subcommittee reports and project updates. First on is the engineering report. I believe that Rick is here. Are you guys going to swap out over there? Okay.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Going through my report on the water main projects, Phase 4, last year's, the 2021 DWRF project. We now have, except for some signing of the final paperwork that will be coming in for Tammy to sign, that project is closed out and we should be receiving the final disbursement in the amount of $86,000, $86,576 within the next week, according to Dave Worthington at Eagle, and that'll close out the $1.485 million 2021 DWRF project. Phase 3 and 5, the projects that are ongoing right now, those obviously have been suspended for the winter due to, well, at the beginning of the winter due to supply chain issues, and contractors are going through making sure that the site is maintained well through the winter. We're sitting, same as I think I reported before, about 85% property owner anticipated property owner participation on the water services. And then in those two, Phase 3, Phase 5, and then the design side of Phase 6, I have submitted the C2R2 reimbursement request number 2. And we did receive an email from Eagle Friday that is being processed, even though there are some tweaks that we need to make the next time around. So I have a feeling that's going to be the process with this. It's going to be somewhat of a moving target, but so we should see that, and that's in the amount of roughly $446,000 there. Phase 6, the design component that's out there, the final documents are to me for review prior to going out for advertising and bidding. We've also submitted for the Eagle permit on that. And we will require some right-of-way for that project, and Roe is putting together the documents similar to what we had to do for Woodland a couple years ago. And as soon as we get that documentation, I'll get it to Tammy so that the township attorney can take a look at that and get that process going. With that and the township-wide water service project coming up sometime later this year, later on in the agenda, we do have a request out there to have approval to go forward and get the next round of meter pits and pit meters ordered in the tune of 300. We have been told that they should be, if we can get those ordered right away, we should receive those in probably around the 1st of September. So that is pretty good timing with these projects going out to construction, maybe in July, and then the meter pits and that being needed for the fall hookups. Sanitary sewer system, the CWSRF project. Contractor is still completing some miscellaneous items, punch list items. I believe at the last board meeting, there was a request for an explanation on change order 9 and 10. Change order 9 in the amount of $8,200 and change was, as we go through the pump stations and draw the water down, the sumps down in there, there's always miscellaneous repairs that need to be made, and that was the installation of a couple of sump pump floats that were not working properly, along with the alarm connections, and then also welding some floor patches in that once got in there, sandblasted them, cleaned them up. There was some additional structural steel that needed to be repaired. So that was change order number 9, change order number 10, which was, get to it, in the amount of $89,471. That primary, the big chunk of that was when we put in a brand new pump station 7 just across the river on River Road, disconnected the old station, put the new station online. We started noticing that the old station's wet well continued to fill up with raw sewage. After some investigation with F&B staff, we found out that the resident and cottage across the road had connected, at some point in the past, had connected to the line going into the old pump station 7. There was no record of that. Further digging into it, we did find out they were paying a sewer bill, but again, there was no record of it, so we weren't aware of that. So what we had to do is, with the new design, we had to install a grinder station on that side of the road for the residents and the cottage to connect to, and then that grinder station then empties into the new force main and new pump station 7. So that was the reason for that expense.
Wow.
With that, like I said, we've submitted the disbursement request number 9 for the CWF project. We should be again receiving that end of this week in the amount of just about $296,000. With the change orders, we've got about $160,000 left with the contractor to complete, but there is roughly $500,000 still under the loan amount, because I know earlier on we had talked about some odor control and all that stuff, so it looks like we still have some room in there to address that if we need to as we wrap up the project. Phase 3 trail project, contractor is slowly getting started. He has gotten his fence removal done. He's started his tree cutting and stump clearing, along with the next step will be the base preparation, all of which he needs to get completed by the April 30th deadline. Well, the trees need to be done by April 15th due to the bats. April 30th for the rest of the base preparation for the rattlesnake. I'm keeping in touch with him. He's been lucky so far with the weather, and there will be no exceptions for the weather, so he has to meet that date without exceptions. So. He's continuing assuring us that he will make that without a problem. So. Continuing on, I have reached out to WTA on the facilities improvement project, and we're working on scheduling a meeting to get that back rolling and such, and then have schedule a presentation for the planning committee here shortly. We'll be keeping apprised of that. The Mission Street slip lining project, that has, I have received the documents from Rowe. I'm reviewing those right now. They all look in pretty good shape. So then it would be just a matter of the Township and the Air Force having their agreement in place before we go forward and advertise that project for spring, early summer construction is still the tentative schedule there. ORV access, we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the meeting with Todd. I think at the last meeting too, there was a question on the debrief for the CBDG grant application that we submitted and the RAP application submitted. Todd can help me out, but the RAP application, I'll start with that one first because that was the first debrief that we had, is even though it was not required to state that there was a match, that was one of the things that they came back in the debrief was, well, you didn't identify a match. Even though our overall project estimate was considerably larger than the grant application we were applying for, which kind of alluded to a match, but they used that as one of the reasons. And then Alpena, we asked, and Alpena received the majority of the funds for Northeast Michigan for that project. The CBDG grant application for the beach park, they didn't really give us, there was a lot of applications submitted, and we just kind of fell through the cracks. We did not score high enough. And again, we've adjusted those grant applications moving forward, and basically we're going to continue to pursue funding for those parks as we see fit, or as we can apply. Speaking of that, December 19th, we were able to submit the Spark grant application, this first round. We submitted a $1 million request for Orchard Beach Park for new restroom and pavilion facility, improvements to the boardwalk, handicap access to the beach across the sand, and then some just additional lighting and other handicap improvements throughout the park, and like I said, to the tune of $1 million. And then we also submitted 2 other applications, one for Ratliff Park for the fishing pier and kayak launch, also some improvements to handicap accessibility across the park, and improved lighting at Warrior Pavilion. And then Old Orchard Campground and Foot Park, we submitted a $100,000 application there for new handicap accessible playground equipment and handicap accessible matting for the area. So the decision is supposed to be yet this month. Haven't heard any update on that, and then there will be 2 other opportunities later in the year, depending on our success or not successful applications this time around. We have looked into the next round of CWRF or CWSRF sewer funding for 2024 and 2024 DWRF funding through Eagle. We did submit an initial letter of intent. We sat through the regional offices, the Bay City regional office meetings with Eagle on the process. These would be projects for 2024 and beyond. There is right up front, they haven't identified the amount, and you've still got to go through the disadvantaged community process or evaluation process, but there is a principal forgiveness in both of these packages right off the bat. Again, no guarantee or what the amount would be. But with on the sewer side, we talked about Pump Station 8 back last fall, having some serious problems there by the in the vicinity of F41. We just had a significant, anytime there's a break on the large force main from Pump Station 25 out to the lagoons is significant enough. That pipe is starting to show its age. And there are other pump stations that were not taken care of in this first round. So there's plenty of projects out there that we could approach, along with looking at some of the earlier stages of implementing some equipment and changes out to the lagoon site, for the future PFAS issues that we're going to have out there that we need to deal with. So our recommendation would be to pursue a project plan for the 2024 CWSRF. For the DWRF, it would also be a recommendation to do that. Again, there is still, beyond the PFAS contamination areas, there are areas where the water main is aging, needs replacement. One significant project is River Road, crossing the river and going up there. Again, the recommendation would be to move forward with the project plans, similar to what we did back in 2020. One component of it to be eligible for reimbursement or including the project plans in the loan And then also the fact that we are dealing with PFAS as an emerging contaminant. They do require you to go through a QBS process, selection process, for the consultant that you would use for the project plan. So to start that process, we would need to get that process completed, we would need to start that process here immediately to get an advertisement out for selection or QBS selection of a consultant. So. I think that is pretty much my report. Again, there's some things coming up later in the agenda that are specific to the other parts that we've been working on. So it's been a busy holiday season, busy beginning of the new season. Looking forward to continuing the effort for 2023, and I've enjoyed my time up to this point, and still interested in pursuing the interests of Oscoda Charter Township.
Right.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you.
questions?
Well, I guess on your report, you have the Holiday Inn Express.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the fire suppression system.
Yep.
Design information appears to be complete pending Oscoda County building.
Yeah, so they did finally submit the fire suppression information. I looked it over, it looked like it was complete. The actual permitting would go through Iosco County Building Department. The other component, as far as that goes, is the connection of the site to the water main. And we did an exploratory dig up in the vicinity of Lake in Michigan. We did find an 8-inch. Well,
Well, there's 8-inch going further up Lake Street, but down Michigan Avenue, it's a 4-inch
going towards the park.
toward the lake.
But up at that corner, the intersection of Lake and Michigan, we do have a spot there that we could connect. They would have to change their site plan to connect up there. The other option would be to extend the main down Lake to the park area and connect where they originally had proposed. But we got an estimate of $85,000 from John Henry to extend that main a block. So those are the two options right now we have for connection. Obviously, the one up at Lake in Michigan would be minimal township expense. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Rick, I have a question.
Yes.
On the CWSRF, you said there's about $500,000 left in the loan?
Yes.
Okay, so, and then, you mentioned possible odor control. I was out at Perimeter, I think that one pump station by the new apartment buildings.
Mhm.
Monday morning, it was just potent. So I think anything we can do to look at that should be a priority.
And that was the intent all along. We just needed to see how much funds we were going to have left over and whether we could include it as a change order within this contract. So I'm not going to guarantee it yet, but it looks like we're coming to an end and we're going to have some funds available. So we'll look at some options there.
Well, as long as the board agrees, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I was there Monday, and it's probably a block and a half radius. So it's reaching where people are living.
Since I came on board in 2017, it's been an issue, and obviously throughout this entire
Yep.
project, it's
My
been continually
my office used
brought
to be
up.
right down the road from there, yeah. You would smell Burger King coming in, which was kind of a good smell, and then you'd hit that, and yeah, not so good. But it has been an issue for a while, and I know I've asked numerous times that we keep on it. So, because we did actually indicate to that developer that we were gonna.
There are, with the options that we will have, there's no, I'll say, absolute guarantee we'll eliminate the odor. Because again, I think I explained earlier on,
Right,
a lot of it has to do with the oversized pipe and the sewage becoming septic in there between cycles of the pumps. So until we, I'll say, downsize the line so it flushes out more continuously, that might be the ultimate solution, but there are some things that we can look at to minimize the odor. Might not be able to eliminate it altogether, but.
Can you slip line it to make it smaller
That
instead
would
of doing a
be-
whole new?
Yeah. And again, it would depend on the condition of the pipe, whether slip lining makes a sense. You can also pipe burst, so you're using the old pipe, but putting a smaller diameter pipe down through there, so
Okay.
that when it's over and done with, it's a smaller, more effective use of the system.
Okay, and I think Ms. McGuire has a couple questions.
With DWRF, I know that's closed, and especially for CWSRF and C2R2, the funds that we're receiving, I know we've borrowed money from the general fund, from the water fund, to prepay for some of the meter pits and things like that. Have we have we requisitioned to get that reimbursement back for that money to put back into the general fund?
Correct me if I'm wrong, we have not expended any money yet for meter pits, or we don't pay for it until we receive them. So I can't ask for a reimbursement until the township actually cuts the check for those.
So we moved money, like $885,000 back in September to pay for things for the C2R2 grant. So I was just wondering, have we submitted for reimbursement for that yet?
Well, part of this has to do with a report that I'm working on for Mr. Woosterbarth. It was at one of our work sessions about the initial money movement from my class and the end of 2021. So part of that was to pay for the Vector truck. We haven't purchased any meter pits yet because we don't have any. And I have a breakdown from Mr. Sutton from our meeting the three of us had that explains all that money movement that was never moved into the water fund. So you might want to wait for that report to come out.
So we have not expended that money?
No, we haven't bought any meter pits because there's none available at this time. Those won't be available till what, February?
Yeah, the latest Mark was gonna check, but I think it was end of January, middle of February, that those will start coming in, and then that's when we'll.
I thought the reason why we were in a hurry to move that money is because we had bills that we had to pay with that money, if I remember the email correctly.
We did. They were the meter pits, or the meters for the radio reads.
Not for the C2R2.
But not for the C2R2. We haven't purchased those yet. So they haven't come in yet, and we can't pay for them until they come in.
Okay.
And so far in the C2R2, we have submitted reimbursement for everything that we have, I'll say, expended. Row invoices, the contractor pay requests, attorney fees, railroad permits, all of that has been submitted in the first round. You've received that reimbursement, and you should be receiving the second one here, I'm hoping within a week.
Okay, I just have not received anything saying pay ourselves back any amount of money, so that's all I was just concerned about.
All right. Does that, anybody else have questions for Rick? All right, thank you very much. Merrill, I'll let you swap, and Catherine can. So now we have the F&V operations update, including the much anticipated water loss report.
Good evening. So we went through all of the water data, the water that was purchased from Huron Shore, the total water that was accounted for as being sold to township customers, the calculated loss, the accounted for loss, which has to do with things like hydrant flushing, known water leaks that have been repaired, usage for example, for the construction projects, the fire department, and all of that was detailed out and attached to the water loss report. There are some interesting numbers in here in regard to like, for example, in February, it shows a negative water loss. Some of that had to do with the billing cycle between January and February. There's a difference between when Huron Shore does its meter reads. They do them on the last business day of the month. And of course, the township, at least up until the time all of the automatic meter reading equipment and the data collector were deployed, was still doing a lot of door-to-door meter reading. And so there was a lag between some of that, and also when the billing cycle was completed, with the holidays and everything at the beginning of the year. Hopefully that will all start to be much more consistent, and we've been working with Tammy and the utility billing staff to make sure that we are trying to get that all consistent and in line, so hopefully that will not cause any numbers like that going into the future. The water loss on average for the whole year was 35%. The previous year, for 2021, the average water loss, total loss, was 41%. So it did drop 6%. Some of that may be because of the new meter reading equipment that's been deployed. Obviously, when you have over 3,000, almost 4,000 water meters out there, even a small percent error per meter can cause what appears to be a larger water loss issue. I have been working through some recommendations from American Water Works Association, the AWWA, and the EPA water loss auditing program. One of the things that I found was interesting is that per the American Water Works Association, the estimated time of inception to appearance for a water leak can be up to 2 years, depending on the size of the water leak and the conditions. There are a lot of components to the water auditing program, including obviously metering being a large part of that, which should be mostly resolved in regard to the individual customer meters. Looking at the total annual volume loss that was unaccounted for in regards to the current annual volume of real loss, and then looking at what AWWA considers the unavoidable annual real loss, which is a calculated value. Looking at that value based on the linear miles of main that you have 87.8 miles of water main. You have approximately 36 miles of private water services, which would be the part that's between the water main and the house. Based on that, I use the 37,088 water services because that includes some of the ones that are in areas like Lakewood Shores, where there's a water service but there's not a meter or a house connected to that, so those still also have to be accounted for. And then looking at the average pressure and some of those other factors, coming up with an unavoidable water loss of somewhere between 40 and 60 million or 40 and 60 million gallons based on AWWA standards. And that's what they call the theoretical low level of leakage in a distribution system with best management practices. Because I think the perception by the public is that that system is hermetically sealed, that it's absolutely tight. But every length of pipe has a joint that's connected. There are valves that are connected to it, the water services that are connected to it, and every point of connection is also a point of weakness. And obviously there are areas of the water main that are older and are subject to more potential for loss. So looking at that ratio of the actual loss versus the unavoidable loss, the AWWA and EPA say that ratio should be between 1.5 and 2.5 in real life, and the township is at 2.1. So we're a little on the high side from where we should be according to EPA and AWWA standards, and that's something we will continue to work on. I did download, AWWA has a water auditing software program, so I'm going to be going through with Rick and with some of the other engineering stuff and getting more detailed information in regard to some of the things that are involved in the water asset management program, which are the actual diameters and length of pipe, the materials and ages of those pipe, which all need to get entered into that spreadsheet and software in order to get a tighter estimate of what that actual unavoidable loss is and what we can do to try to address it. So we are continuing to work on that. It is obviously something that is of huge concern to the township and to its residents, as all that unaccounted for water is part of the cost of operating the system. I will point out, just so that the public is aware of this, in November, we did have a resident that came in, I believe it was to pay their water bill, and casually mentioned to the utility billing clerk that they had had a leak in their front yard for several weeks and just hadn't gotten around to reporting it because it was before their water meter. They had their water meter in their house. And when we went out to repair that leak, it was approximately 3/8 of an inch in diameter. And based on calculations for, that's not a very big hole, but based on the water pressure and the length of time we estimated that that person had observed the leak actually come to the surface, and then we reported it and we repaired it like within 24 hours, that there was over 500,000 gallons lost through that one small leak. And so this is what is so hard with the system, is that all those tiny leaks or seemingly tiny leaks add up pretty rapidly. It doesn't take a very large hole to create a lot of water loss in the system. And when you look at, 3,000 to 4,000 service leads, and possibly others that are like that, or who've maybe not come to the surface or maybe are not quite that large, that water loss can add up pretty rapidly. So we continue to be aggressive about it, and we appreciate the general public. If you see, signs of what might be a water leak, an area in your yard that looks a little wetter than the rest of it, and maybe, that grass is greener and the rest is kind of dead, or, softer or something like that, please call in. We'll go out and investigate it, and even if it happens to find out that it was your sump pump or something like that, we'll let you know, but we really need to work on getting that water loss under control. So does the board have any questions in regard to that particular subject?
I have a couple, Ken. I haven't seen, I know I've asked for it a few times, I'm looking for the calibration schedule and maintenance of the master meters.
The master meters do not have a calibration schedule, they have a verification schedule. Those master meters, which are solid state ultrasonic meters, cannot be calibrated. Basically, when Huron Shore put through all the new master meters, they also put test ports on either side of those meters so that those meters can be verified for the flow, that what is being read on the meter is actually what is going through there. Interestingly enough, when you do those measurements, if you were to have, Emmy Simpson or another water meter verification specialist come in, the gauges that they are using have plus or minus 5% accuracy, whereas the meters themselves are guaranteed from the manufacturer to be plus or minus 1% accurate. So you're using a less accurate measurement to calibrate or verify the flow of those meters.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just looking to see what your preventative maintenance plan is on paper, so we can see it's being done. Number two, we have a large system, we have an old system, I get that, I'm an engineer. However, I don't see us doing a lot of preventative measures, and I don't think it's really in your contract to detect these leaks. That's the type of plan I'm looking for from F&V to present to the township. We may have to invest some money to help find some of these with proper equipment. And I'm still harping on that, and I want to see that plan come from F&V to the township.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. The last round of water leak detection, which was done in 2020, Emmy Simpson is one of the regional, experts on that. I believe the township spent something around $24,000 to $26,000 on that study. They found or identified a couple of leaks. They estimated that the loss through those leaks, based on the current rates, would save the township $3,000 a year. So that would be about an 8-year return on investment. We did explore every single identified leak. A couple of them were dug up and investigated, left exposed, and no leak had actually occurred. They had identified a couple of valves they thought might be leaking. And then the week after they had performed that study, a leak daylighted over behind Rite Aid that they had not identified, that had been leaking, visually appeared to have been leaking for a while. So the accuracy of those leak detection studies is somewhat subject to, doubt. I know the township has had them done several times since I've been here, and aside from one large leak that was found under the runway out at the airport, I don't think any of them have actually paid for the cost of the study to identify them.
I guess I'm looking in terms of equipment that F&V could use on a daily basis, weekly basis when you're out and about. to help find these leaks. Ultrasonics, whatever. I know I attended a meeting with Josh in the township. We had a company present this to us that they put this into their service, into their plan, operating these types of systems. I'm looking for those types of preventative measures, not an outside service, just some equipment that F&V would need or could acquire and do this as part of their preventative maintenance on a daily basis. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, if you have information on that presentation, I'll be happy to follow up on it with them, because I was not in that presentation, so I'm not sure what type of equipment or vendor you're talking about, so.
Be glad to send over the
That would
equipment
be
that they
great.
talked to us about.
Yeah,
So I appreciate that being investigated.
okay.
Thank you.
I just had a question. I know we have a lot of curb stops in Lakewood Shores, you know, in vacant lots. I mean, do we check those? I mean, you know, there could be a lot of leaks just happening there. Is there a way to check those?
Yeah, the only way that we have to check those right now is visually. And of course, obviously, some of those areas are relatively low-lying.
Right.
Have a lot of
Very wet,
vegetation
yeah.
on them and are wet. I know we had one last year that we investigated, we went back to several times, where someone had reported that they thought there was a leak, and it ended up being like a natural spring that was coming to the surface. So, you know, we do follow through on anything that we are, you know, notified about or that anyone observes. But, you know, unless there's some other technology that we can explore that to do that, I know there are all sorts of things that can be deployed in pipe. They talk about having, you know, flow meters. You can do ground penetrating radar. There's all sorts of items that are available, but of course, obviously, there's a cost associated with those as well. So we will continue to work with the township on that, and I'm happy to explore any information or options that come up.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions for Kat? Great, hearing none, then we have a website committee update, I think. Do we?
Okay, good, then I could talk about that.
All
I was
right.
kind of like, okay, who's going to say anything? So, let's see, so just, what's today, Monday? So last week, Jeremy and I got together, as we agreed at the previous board meeting, and we did indeed review the website. And between the two of us, we found a number of issues. Some of its content, some of it was from a proofreading perspective. I found, you know, grammatical errors, words missing in sentences, things of this nature. So I requested from Tammy that we get access to the website so that we could make these corrections. They're not complex corrections, but they definitely contribute to usability issues, as well as another type of issue, which is the EIC website is not connected to the township's website through a link or anything. So whereas I thought for some time there was a link you could jump to the EIC website from, maybe, let's say, doing business or something like that. But there wasn't the case. Also, I noticed that the EIC website had kind of the basic flavor of the Oscoda style of our government website, but it's not quite the same. So that was something else I identified. That's just cosmetic. But there were some other more concerning issues that I found in the website, having to do with links that I would have thought would have been there to make it easier to find what I thought was going to be important. Also, in even just looking out for example, looking up permits, just trying to find out how do you get permits, how do you find that? It wasn't easy to get to. Chasing up on the list of items that Kelly Brown had identified in an email that she had sent to the board, where she listed out how hard it was for her to find some information. We went through it, and we ended up agreeing with it. So yeah, the point is, the outcome here is not a grim, you know, terminal condition here for the website. It's not. It's actually just, it just wasn't, it was, when you do a testing, you usually put it through the paces of use, somebody trying to do something. It just didn't look like it was ever tested, and therefore these items just didn't get caught. So, like I said, we're looking for that permission to get into the website, and then we can make those adjustments. So I expect maybe in another couple of weeks, when we meet again, I'll have another update for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, well, now we are to the meeting. Just over to the superintendent's report. First on, we have some invoices from Rowe. I think Rick is still in the audience. We have questions, but go ahead, Tammy.
Okay, your packet contains the following listed invoices from Rowe Engineering for services rendered. These invoices require Township Board approval.
Okay, so the first one we have is invoice number 106783 for the wastewater pump station improvements, and the amount on that is $465. Did anybody have any questions or issues with that?
Nope, I'll make a motion that we approve invoice 106783 in the amount of $465 to be paid from the Clean Water Revolving Fund.
Okay, is there support?
Support by Cummings.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings, to approve invoice 106783. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wurstabarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is invoice 106785 for Phase 3 water system improvements. The amount of that is $1,545. Is there any questions or comments or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Phase 3 water system improvements in the amount of $1,545 from C2R2 after reimbursement is available.
Support?
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Wusterbarth, to approve invoice 106785. Roll call.
Mr. Wurstabarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes. Motion carried. And last is invoice 106847 for the Iosco Exploration Trail. The amount on that is $8,535. Any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, is there a motion?
848.
Huh?
It's 848. Just if we.
Oh, did I say 106848 is invoice? I don't know what I said.
I'll make a motion that we approve invoice 106848 for the exploration trail for $8,535 from 101-751-880-572.
Okay, is there-
Support. Sutton?
Right, there's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Sutton for invoice 106848. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wurstabarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. All right, next on is the 2023 blanket purchase order authorization for Old Orchard Park vendors. I believe we do this
Every year.
every year.
Yes, your packet contains a memo dated January 16th from the Parks and Recreation Director concerning the approval of purchase orders related to the Old Orchard Park Campground store. Old Orchard Park has several different vendors that are projected to spend more than $2,000 for the 2023 camping season. This memo details the line items in the 2023 budget dedicated to these purchases. During the 2022 camping season, Old Orchard Park spent $94,254.38 with these vendors. The Township Board is being requested to approve a total not to exceed $103,300 for these vendors.
All right, is there any discussion or?
So it looks like the $9,000 additional over 2022 is growth? Okay,
Cost of goods going up, more
Mhm.
people coming in,
yeah.
all
Yeah.
the above?
Yeah.
All right,
Is that the justification, Tammy?
Yes.
Is it your work? Okay.
yes. Okay, do we have a motion?
All right, I move that we approve the amount not to exceed $103,300 for vendors associated with the Old Orchard Park Campground store.
Okay, support. There's a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Ms. McGuire to approve that blanket purchase order for 2023. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishwabath?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Now we're talking about the Michigan PAR, right? Michigan PAR Plan 2023 premium.
Yes.
All right, your packet contains an annual renewal for municipal insurance coverage through the Michigan Township Participating Plan in the amount of $87,518. Also provided along with the invoice premium is a summary of coverages for 2023. This annual renewal for municipal insurance coverage requires Township Board approval.
Great, is there any discussion or questions for Tammy?
Just a question, since the coverage already began on January 1st, are we late to be making this payment?
No, he puts this together at the end of the year, and
Okay,
they've had ours for a while, so they submitted and extend that coverage, giving us time to bring it to the board. Because
Okay.
it takes about 30 days to get it back to them.
yep, there it is, right, all right.
I was gonna say this is normal time for this invoice every year.
Yep.
Is this the same coverage that we've had, Josh, or is there an increase because of different equipment or building costs or anything?
Same coverage, and there was some additional PFAS coverage that went in there, and then reduced costs as we went through the building. So we actually reduced our costs by between 10 and 15,000 on the total plan and liability. And then there was a new PFAS coverage that basically rewrote one of our old plans that was attached to it. So there is additional coverage for that for the township. There is liability from anything that might bypass the Air Force.
Nice.
All right, I move that we approve the $87,518 invoice for renewal of municipal, municipal insurance coverage effective January 1st, 2023 through January 1st, 2024.
Support.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Wusterbarth to approve that invoice. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishwabath?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Great. Now is the Oscoda Township Facade Grant Program approval.
Okay, your packet contains the proposed facade grant program for Oscoda Township downtown businesses. The EIC has been working on the program guidelines for several months, engaged the expertise of consultant Mission North, and the review of the township attorney. Funding for this program was included and approved in the 2023 budget, which will be charged to fund 236-266-801.000. Creating a facade grant program and funding proposed projects requires Township Board approval.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Is there any verbiage in the grant program? Because I know when we had the facade grant before through the DDA, we had to keep the, like the reporting separately, like the recording of the expenditures. Is there still that type of language?
I don't think we have it embedded in the program, no. Do we need to have a set aside to identify expenditures?
He's not sure, question, we keep a separate set of books, is that essentially?
Like professional fees is 801,000. Like you could make 801,100. It would be the facade grant expenditures. That's how we did it before when we had the DDA. I don't know if it's a requirement or if it was just something they did to be able to keep track of it easier. That's all.
Would be better for tracking.
So you're more talking about the expense itself instead of it.
Right.
Putting it in a line like we do with the other ones?
Yeah,
So
because
we
it's
can
going to go
track it.
into the common account if that's the fund it's going into, but for your expenditure, I didn't know if it was necessary by the grant to keep that expenditure separate.
We haven't written it that it's required, no. It's not written up that way. Remember,
Okay.
this isn't a grant through another agency, this is our own facade grant. So it's
Okay.
our
In-house.
rules, basically.
But we could create a line item specifically for that to be able to track and see what's been spent. We can do it that way.
If that's what you guys want.
That would probably be better, actually.
Or per project.
Yes.
Any other questions? So is the, I'm sorry, and I mean, I did read through this, but is the EIC approving the grant applications, or will they come back to the township board for final approval?
The EIC is approving them, again, the way it's written. If the board would prefer that we do a final presentation to the Oscoda Township Board, I've got no problem with that.
All right, any other questions, comments? A motion? Every time I say that, it sounds like emotion, and I don't mean that in
I've always thought that
Yeah,
over the years. Yeah, yeah.
motion,
That's
sorry.
right.
I'll make a motion to approve the Township Facade Grant Program and the funding eligibility projects charged to Fund 236 and the rest to be determined.
Support Cummings.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings, to approve the program as submitted. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wurschelbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. All right, now, the Oscoda Township Corridor Improvement Authority, which we had the presentation on earlier.
Okay, your packet contains information regarding the EIC proposed Corridor Improvement Authority. The EIC recommends board approval based on the presentation made by Mission North and the budgetary costs associated with the process of designation. While there are many decisions to be considered and a cost to achieve this designation, the EIC feels it's appropriate to have board support before going any further in this matter. Project costs for projects such as this have been included and approved in the 2023 budget, which will be charged to Fund 236-266-801.000. Proceeding with adopting a corridor improvement authority requires township board approval.
Tammy,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
I was just going to maybe add some narrative to that. I'm not requesting that we formally vote on if we're going to have a corridor improvement
Right.
authority. I'm merely asking for the board's support in continuing this journey. There's a few more things we have to vet, like Rob had mentioned the criteria of the application of creating the CIA. Includes a downtown plan, includes your TIFA plan, if that's what we want. So we have to decide on some more things, but I don't want to keep going down this road if the board is not in favor of this as a strategy. So I'm only asking for a blessing that we continue, and then we can come bring a more formal proposal, like this is how we think this lays out. Here's the cost it will be to achieve it, but we do have the costs, I think, to pursue this in the budget for 2023.
I guess, just again for my clarification, so you'd still come back, you wouldn't really work on the development plan or any of that, formalize it. You'd kind of come back with a more detailed plan of what the corridor improvement would,
Yep.
what direction you're going to go in, I guess, what area, everything, and then come back to us.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
mean,
okay.
I think the EIC has sort of settled in on where we think the corridor will be. But I think it really comes down to, Rob and I have talked about what the potential costs will be to go through this process.
Right.
And so if that's 20,000, if it's 30,000, I don't have that pinned down yet. I mean, that'll take a little bit more time between Rob and myself with the EIC of vetting that out, and then we would come to you to say, okay, here's what we'd like to do, here's what we think it will cost, and then ask for your formal permission to then
Right.
proceed down that path.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I, in theory, think it's good to have a actual funding mechanism to do these improvements that we would like to do besides using general funds.
Yep.
So the growth, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, in theory,
Works out,
in
yeah.
5 years or 7 years, if we execute this CIA, Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we could be paying for these facade grant improvements out of the
Right.
corridor improvement fund instead of the general fund.
instead of the general, which
Correct. So,
I think helps with the public in regard to that's growth that's specifically from that area, and it's going back in that area for improvements. It's not being taken from taxes that, you know, citizen X is paying out on Bisnet Road or whatever, and it's educating people to understand that, so I think that's good. And, I mean, I'll just use a point, I mean, the LDFA was put into place at a perfect timing, because after they did the LDFA, they put a couple new hangars in, so their growth was huge to begin with out in the airport authority. And now that growth, again, it's not all the taxes in the area, it's just the growth. That growth is being put back in, and it's getting put into infrastructure specifically in that area, which, you know, has come in handy on a couple projects already, right, Tammy, in regard to like seepage pond and demolition for those old ugly, the old, I can't think of it, the fuel farm off, I mean, that's gonna be paying for all that, so it works out well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest concerns that, you know, we have in the town based on, you know, multiple surveys and dialogue and feedback is, you know, the empty buildings in the downtown.
Great.
It's gonna be a great tool to help make that better for us.
Yep, it's good to have the funds.
So my
Not just in
question
general.
was just how much money did we put aside in the 2023 budget for this?
We had we clustered it into just professional fees for consultants.
Yeah,
So, so there wasn't line items in there or anything like that.
Yeah, I just wondered, does anybody remember what the amount was that we budgeted for this?
I think I had 50,000 in there for it.
Okay, that's fine, just wondered what we were thinking. All right.
And then, just as a point of, I know in the past that when the DDA and everything, we actually had a specific attorney that handles DDA structure that was used, same thing with the airport authority, because they specialize in it, and it ends up actually costing you less money to have somebody that specializes in the
Right.
setup to deal with. So I would maybe reach out to the airport authority, because that was the same one that was utilized for the township,
Okay.
for the DDA, for better or worse. But
If the
anyway.
CIA has to go through the township too, like the LDFA, then I know the LDFA is not allowed to borrow money, so I would like to see some type of thing like that for the CIA as well. And only use the money that's generated through the revenue created from the TIFA capture.
Right. I think there's different rules depending on how it was set up. The
Right.
LDFA was super specific.
Yep.
But- Right, with that, I would make a motion, I'm sorry, further discussion? Don't want to jump the gun? Okay. I would make a motion to authorize you to move forward with pursuing the concept of the Corridor Improvement Authority and then bringing it back to the township for full review.
Okay, support by Cummings.
Okay, so there's a motion by Ms. Richards, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Bush DeBarth?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next on is the Place and Main or Place Plus Main? Not
Place and
sure.
Main.
Advisor's proposal.
Okay, your packet contains a proposal by Place and Main Advisors to refresh the Oscoda Township Economic Development Strategy and the Place Leap strategies. Place and Main provided the township a full analysis and strategy back in 2019. The EIC believes the timing is appropriate that we evaluate what has worked, not worked, and refresh the vision for the next 3 to 5 years being appropriate. The EIC has reviewed and recommends the Oscoda Township Board approval to proceed. Funding for consultant projects like this have been approved in the 2023 budget and will be charged to Fund 236-266-801.000. Hiring Place and Main requires Township Board approval.
I'm going to go back to the question I keep asking, but are there any funds from RRC that we could utilize, because this is another thing that we did to become RRC, and, you know, and I know it used to be like up to $25,000 that we as a township could utilize to help facilitate that. Would that be something that we could ask them, part of that money, to, instead of expending our money, to do that?
Yep, and I've already had that conversation with the MEDC. I have the form to fill out. What I would like to first is for you guys to approve that we want to hire them, and then I can do the paperwork to the MEDC to get some what's called technical assistance dollars. And then we'll know kind of how much we could offset the 15,000 with those RRC monies.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the place and main proposal to update Oscoda Township's place leap strategies for the cost of $15,000 to be charged to Fund 236-266-801-000 with possible reimbursement being sought by Mr. Dickerson.
Support.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Westerbarth to approve that with asking for, reimbursement. I guess before we vote, I would stress more that I would like to know what they're willing to put towards this before we expend our, 100. If they're willing to do the full 15,000, I feel that would be, with everything else that we've got going, would be a smart move. So I guess I just want to stress that.
Well, I'm going to ask for 15,000.
Yeah,
And I feel confident that we'll get it, but I can't.
Yeah.
Obviously, I can't promise it.
Right. I think that it would, that's what that funds were supposed to be for, is to help the community achieve the RRC, without it being a financial detriment to us. And we have expended a lot of money to date. So if we haven't gotten any of the 25,000, then I want to make sure that we ask for it. So with that, roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Westerbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is the Match on Main grant.
All right, your packet contains detailed information regarding the next round of the MEDC's Match on Main grant program. The township's eligibility to apply for this grant is a direct result of our RRC designation. Township may submit up to 2 grant requests supporting qualified small businesses. A local workshop was conducted by the MEDC on January 10th, giving our businesses the opportunity to learn more about the program and ask questions directly to the MEDC. The EIC recommends the board approve the grant application process, begin with local applications due February 3rd, and the township meeting with the MEDC deadline of February 24th. Applying for any grant requires township board approval.
So there was a meeting with the public already to see if there was interest?
It was just an informational meeting for
Okay.
the businesses that, are in the qualified area of the downtown.
Okay,
So everybody was invited to that. We had,
Yep.
I think, 4 or 5 businesses who participated and showed up. I think we have 2 folks who are pretty interested. So I would be surprised if we got more than 2 applicants just based on feedback and engagement with the businesses. But I can't guarantee that we will have 2. So Tammy mentioned in the narrative that we would have the February 3rd as the local application deadline. The EIC would do scoring on February 8th, then we would bring the applicants to the board at the February 13th meeting for your approval, and then we would proceed with the application process. And then that deadline is February 24th.
okay. And they have to, I think I read, they have to pay the money up front and then get reimbursed.
Yes, they pay,
correct?
yep. It's up
And
to
we're not
20
gonna, I think I read something in there about that we could assist in funding that or but we're not gonna do that.
I don't think that's part of the program, no.
Okay.
They have to spend, and again, it's a cap of 25,000. Their project could be more than 25.
Right,
But the grant only pays up to 25. And then if you're on the minimum side, they have to at least put in 10% match.
so that's where the 2,500 came in.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so technically, they have to have a project that's 27,500 to get a $25,000 grant.
gotcha. And are they requiring anything like Davis-Bacon wages or anything like that on the projects? Do you know?
Not in this program, no.
Okay, good to know.
No. And then they submit, and it's not It's not a drip reimbursement either. They have to complete the project, submit one time, and then they get reimbursed once. So it's not a, hey, I spent money on this and now I want $5,000, and then now I spent this. It's a one-time submittal.
And who certifies that the work was done? I submitted proposal A and I said I was gonna do X, Y, and Z. Who's gonna come out and make sure X, Y, and Z was done correctly to their specifications before they reimburse it?
I believe the municipality, so us as the lead applicant has to
So we
verify
have
that.
to
Yeah,
put
make
our,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
And who's gonna,
Who's we?
yeah, who would we be?
Well, since the EIC is leading this charge, I suppose that responsibility falls on me.
Okay.
What kinds of things would we be certifying?
Just if your application said I was going to buy a new kitchen equipment, you know, we verify that, oh, yep, sure enough, you've got new equipment, I've got the invoice or, you know, proof of purchase, basically. If you said that you were going to do an outdoor seating arena, that, you know, you said that the benches were going to cost this and railing was going to cost this, and that, well, by visual inspection, we see that the material showed up and that your invoices match what you said they were going to be. There's a lot of upfront paperwork in this application that sort of starts to take care of the proof part, because as an applicant, it's not good enough to say, I'm going to do a new kitchen and I plan on spending $20,000 in new equipment. They want you to have the vendor you're buying it from, what you're buying, how much that piece of equipment is going to be, and it has to be all itemized. And that's the raw criteria of the application. What we learned in the first round is it's very, very time consuming, and the application is very detailed.
Okay. So all that has to be submitted, they will review it, and then they will get back to say if it's awarded to us, and then we would notify the business.
Correct.
Okay. So do we end up with any kind of liability then for basically signing off and saying it was all done?
I mean, I
I
can
don't know,
add.
I'm asking. Yeah.
I don't see how. I mean, it's really a visual inspection. We're not checking off to the integrity of, well, the kitchen appliance is going to last 5 years and it didn't, and we're somehow on the hook. I mean, all we're doing is visually certifying that what they said they were going to do was done.
So you're
Right.
not in a position to certify structural integrity
No.
of something or another?
No.
Okay.
So we're just a pass-through.
Yeah, we're almost not even a pass-through. I did ask, because I think, Jamie, you had asked the first round, one of your questions was as well, how do the funds flow? And I asked Lindsay that specific question, and even at her level from the MBDC, the check is going to cut from the MEC through to the applicant directly, or the grantee directly.
Oh, good.
We're hardly even a pass-through. We're just the
Okay, so it doesn't
We're
go
just
to
the
us
applicant.
and we don't give it to them.
Yeah, we're just
That's
sort
good
of
to know.
I don't even know how I want to say that. We're just the grand applicant for the
Check and balance.
sub-applicants.
Right, but as the grant applicant, then there's obviously a
Responsibility.
application or a contract
Yeah.
that we're gonna have to sign. So that probably should be reviewed by the attorney.
No, okay. Yeah, and I can have that, hopefully we could have that stuff to you on the 13th before you give the final blessing
Just
for
to
us
make sure that, I know
Yeah.
that Lisa has reviewed things in the past and there's been some things that she didn't like us signing on to, so, yeah.
Find out what we're signing up for, the responsibility that we don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
Yep.
right.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Sorry, I monopolized the questions. Anybody else? Okay. With that, is there a motion? A motion?
Sure, that's right. All right, I move that we approve the pursuit of the MEDC Match on Main grant and accepting the businesses nominated by the EIC as the township's co-applicants.
Support, Sutton?
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Sutton. You indicated accepting the applications by the EIC, but you're bringing them to us, and then we're accepting, correct?
Yeah, local applications are submitted to the EIC. The EIC will score them on the 8th. Then I will bring you the scored applications on the 13th.
Okay, for
I
then
think
us
there's
to
a
approve.
probably word missing, and that's the process of accepting the applications by the board.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
all right, so would you like me to restate it?
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
All right.
Mr. Wishabarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes. All right, sounds like an exciting program. Hopefully we get some good applications.
Yep, hopefully.
Thank you, Rob, for your time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, moving on, then we have the Oscoda Township ORV road access. We're gonna end up like Hale Mudfest, right? We can have all this people downtown, it'll be fun.
Heck yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
All right, your packet includes mapping that supports the request for 2 ORV initiatives within the township that require both Oscoda Township Board and Iosco County Road Commission approval. While both scenarios will require a multi-step approach, both start with a letter from the Oscoda Township Board requesting the Iosco County Road Commission approve 1, ORV crossing over River Road from Old Orchard Campground to Connector Trail to the U.S. National Forest. 2, allowing ORV navigation on specific township roads to include Lake Street, East Park Street, and East Water Street as specified by the map of the downtown. A letter from Oscoda Township Chief of Police should also be included. The process of approving local street access in the downtown will include a resolution by the Township Board once the Road Commission provides its approval. The ORV crossing River Road will include an expedited environmental process with the Forest Service to obtain appropriate permits. Budgets have not been finalized but are believed to be about $2,000 for outside resources. The Road Commission has been briefed on these initiatives and are believed to be supportive. The EIC supports these initiatives as they offer a positive tourism impact for both Old Orchard Park and commerce opportunities for the downtown businesses and absorption of current empty buildings for commercial growth opportunities.
All right. Questions, discussion?
No, I'm excited, especially for the one across from Old Orchard Park.
Jamie, I didn't hear what you said. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I said I was excited about the one for across from Old Orchard Park.
Oh, right. Is there a component here that requires some feedback from the police department on this with regard to, like, what is this impact going to be on?
That's where the letter of support comes into play, so from the chief of police. And I've obviously, or not obvious, but I have been in multiple conversations with the police department and the chief of police, and I believe them to be supportive of this initiative, and I believe the chief will write the letter of support. Again, I've had dialogue with him.
Okay, good, because I want to go on record of making sure that we're not pushing this on the police department.
Sure.
Rather that they're
Yep.
pre-approving it.
And that was a question that
Okay.
came up in the road commission meeting that I had with
Good.
their commissioner. Like, we want to make sure we're not going to support this unless the police support it and your board supports it. So
That's fine. I like the safety factor first, personally,
yeah, sure.
than us, but I get your point. Yeah.
Well, and that's why it's really, we're trying to provide limited access. We're not trying to open up the gateway to every road we have in the township. It's,
Right.
designed to provide really those tourists, commercial access to our businesses.
Yep.
Not turn it into a free-for-all amongst our whole township.
Exactly.
How will it be signed? I mean, how would I know? I'm Joe Blow ORVer coming into town. How am I gonna know how I can get from point A to point B without getting pulled over?
Yeah, we'll have to work on some signage. We'll have to provide mapping, much like, they do at the DNR. And then the Forest Service provides maps and guides and,
To push them down, because it's like pushing them on Lake Street instead of US 23, obviously.
right. Yeah, we'd want some signage there.
Right.
And then as you cross over, you'd want some signage directing them down Lake Street.
I think the county has maps also.
Oh. Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, and it's another one. It's a multi-step process, but I can't go much farther unless I get your vote for
Right.
approval for me to move this
Take the
down the
first
road.
step without the,
Yeah. Yep.
So taking Todd, they can get to the Admiral gas station crossing 23 right there by Sunrise.
Well,
Looks like on this map.
They'd want to take their gas cans and walk them across the street because you can only go across the US 23 at a perpendicular and there's no landing spot for them.
Well, I
So-
thought that was on the corner. Well, here's my next question. Because county roads are open to ORVs. I mean, I can go down Cedar Lake Road as far as the F-41 stoplight. And I can't go across that to hit the little dirt trail or dirt road to go to the speedway behind Old White's Furniture. It's not allowed in our township. It's a township thing, not a county thing. Are we looking at F-41 to get to that point for the other side of town?
I was told by the road commission that we're not likely getting anything on F-41. It's just it's too congested. They have a real safety concern there, so.
But how do they allow ORVs outside of Oscoda Township on F-41?
That I'm not in a position to answer that question. That's not in my
If you would ask that question, I'd really like to know, because
I mean, maybe it's just a congestion issue once you're out, out into the county. It's a different matter than being right on F-41 and all of the, the Coletta employees coming out at certain times. It's, it gets very congested. You've got pedestrians that are walking that sidewalk. I mean, I think it's just a major safety issue that they don't want to be involved with. I feel lucky that they're on board with what I'm proposing.
Baby steps?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you just asking to cross F-41 there at Cedar Lake Road, or you're talking about running the whole road to get like to the Stoneville Trails or whatever those trails are that
you
are
could take it
by
out to
the,
Rhea Road.
yeah.
You could take F-41 to that side of town and go down.
Don't people already
The
do
backside.
that now that end up going to
Some
Desi's
do
and
that
stuff?
have
I think I've seen
some
some
do that
people.
plate their vehicle as a motor vehicle.
Oh,
So
so you can
see
do that
some
with
that
the
actually have a
bike, yeah.
Michigan.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, I have a couple
Michigan
friends
plate.
that run out to
It's
Desi's, I know, for dinner, so I'm assuming
But-
they get out there somehow.
I know I can't go past that point, so between F-41 all the way to Rhea is shut down.
Yeah, like I said, I'm looking at baby steps here, and if we can get this together and
Okay.
we all
Okay.
agree.
No, this is a great start, don't get
And
me
it
wrong. I like
works,
this.
and everybody's on board, or even most people are on board, then we could go pursue other opportunities.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve a letter to the Oscoda County Road Commission requesting approval of ORV access as presented.
Okay, I'll support that. Do you need the motion separate for the police department's letter, or authorizing them, or do we even really,
No.
we don't need anything on that?
It's, it's up to you. I mean, I'm not.
Oh, including a letter, how about that? I'll amend my motion to include a letter from the chief of police.
Okay.
If he is so inclined to do
To
so.
do that, yeah.
Okay, all right, and I will continue to support that. So, again, motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Ms. Richards. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes,
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to meter pit purchase request.
All right, your packet contains an invoice obtained from Ferguson Waterworks in the amount of $319,200 for the purchase of 300 meter pits for the upcoming water main phase projects. These meter pits need to be ordered now in order to receive them in a timely fashion. As noted in the email also attached, the meter pits have a lead time currently of 32 to 39 weeks for delivery. I would ask that the board approve the purchase of 300 meter pits for the upcoming remaining water main projects in the amount of $319,200 to be paid from C2R2 funds after reimbursement is requested and deposited into the township's account.
All right, is there any further discussion or a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the purchase of 300 meter pits for the upcoming water main projects in the amount of $319,200 to be paid from the C2R2 funds after reimbursement is requested and deposited into the township's account.
Okay, I will support that motion. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, we have one resolution. It's Resolution 2023-02, which is the redesignation of primary water main on Lake Street, I believe.
All right, this resolution is just a request. See if the board is interested in adopting 2,100 feet of 16-inch water main that would start at the meter pit at Lake and Division and run all the way down Lake Street and turn and take a left on Michigan Avenue to 23. Currently, there are no hydrants on Lake Street. And the township has a secondary main that runs perpendicular to the 16-inch main, but a 6-inch would not support hydrants in the way we'd like it to. If there was ever a very large fire there, I believe the fire chief has stated some worry on that issue. By adopting this section of Maine, the township can then use it for taps, economic improvement in that area, anywhere that runs in that area, and also the main part being adding hydrants to that particular area of town.
No, I had asked a few questions in regard to, do we know, which Tammy did answer, but I'll just ask what my questions were. This has been maintained by Hushra, so do we know what kind of state this main is in? What year was it put in? Is there maintenance plans in place? Has there been maintenance on it? Because obviously if this gets turned over to us, it now becomes our responsibility, correct?
Yes.
To
So,
maintain.
do you want me to go down the list of those?
Sure.
Okay. So, this water main in particular was put in 1997 with grant funds from the county. I spoke with Kath and we had some great discussion. Ms. Richards had asked me if it had been, the water main had been assessed, and Kath's response was, it's only ever dug up when there's a leak, and they've never had one. Useful life expectancy on a water main is 70 to 100 years. This main in particular is 25 years old, and it wouldn't be in a capital improvement plan until it reached approximately the age of 50. So it's fairly new. So I think any issues would be minimal.
Right, and what is the material that it's made out of?
I believe that's a ductile iron main.
Which is not translate.
Right, that's positive, right. So, I guess is one of the reasons we want to do this, part of the expansion that we're currently trying to,
No.
no?
No, this secondary main request is strictly for hydrants in the
Hydrants and
area.
so on. So this
has
wouldn't be
nothing to do with the
something-
hotel.
Okay, so yeah, so we're still gonna need to run possibly a larger main for the
Well, it would
hotel.
be replacement of the 6-inch that runs through there, which Kath, I don't know if you have an estimate of what that would cost to replace?
Well, I know that in regard to the hotel, specifically, their current site plan calls for them to connect to the water main closer to the lake. And the main that runs down Michigan Avenue was the one that Rick was talking about earlier. They had an $85,000 price for the township to replace the main from Lake Street toward the beach park in order to accommodate that. You know, part of it would be working with the developer to see if they could change where they're connecting to the water main. If they were to connect to the water main on Lake Street instead of at the east end of their site, that would resolve some of those issues.
My question was to replace the 6-inch that we currently own
Oh, the
that
currently
way.
owned. You know, to replace a 6-inch water main, it would depend on what you wanted to upsize it to. But assuming that you wanted to upsize it to a 10 or 8 or 10-inch main, you're talking, you know, $100 to $200, possibly more per linear foot. So if you wanted to replace that same main length, you know, 2,100 feet potentially of main, with that, you're looking at, you know, $210,000 to, you know, maybe $500,000. I wasn't prepared for the question, so I really can't give you a more detailed answer than that.
I was just hoping for a rough estimate. but thank you.
Downside to us be for passing this resolution?
Not passing it?
Hmm?
For passing it, or?
Yeah, if we did not pass
If
it,
we
or we
didn't
don't
pass it,
actually take ownership of the pipe, what would we just don't have, I shouldn't say just don't have, because that's negative, we need fire suppression for our residents down there, so,
Other than that, there is no downside to not
Okay.
passing.
okay, gotcha.
And the fire chief did, I don't know if any in the office, if you have a copy of the board packet, there is a memo in there for him also.
I did read that.
Yeah.
He's in big support.
Yep.
You know, my only concern would be that we're now, you know, in charge of maintaining it, but from the sounds of it, it's a fairly new pipe.
And
So-
additionally, even with, you know, Huron Shore having that as a primary main, as a member of the Huron Shore Authority, you know, Oscoda still currently has, you know, a stake in the game as far as the maintenance of that pipe. So it's not that you're going from having no responsibility for the main, because as part of Huron Shore, you have responsibility for it now. It's just that you would have then full responsibility for it if it were to be changed to a secondary main. But that also gives you not just hydrants that could be attached to it, but if there were any other developments on Lake Street, whether they're new homes or anything else, would have the ability to be connected to that section of main.
Okay. All right, is there further questions, or is there a motion?
I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-02, redesignation of primary water main as presented.
Support Cummings.
There's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Cummings in regard to passing Resolution 2023-02. Any further
No.
discussion?
No, wasn't it? It was wrong number. You read the wrong line.
Yeah, 2023.
I said 2023-02.
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct, wrong one.
No,
Why is
it
that the
has
wrong
to
one?
be,
It's the one above, isn't it?
What, one above?
The 2022-42.
42 is on the resolution.
no, it
I'm
has to
reading
be
what's on the
23.
agenda, so I
Yeah.
don't know.
The resolution needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
Ah, there it
Because
is.
it's 20, it goes by year and then,
I was gonna say, we can't pass something that we've already, yeah.
Sorry, that's my fault.
All right.
All right, how about that motion with a correction to the number?
Oh, gotcha. So the resolution at the top is incorrect in the, yeah, I read the other part, but.
It's 2022.
So technically, the resolution in the packet just has a clerical error in regard
Yep.
to the number. So it should
Correct.
read 2023-02.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Cummings for Resolution 2023-02 with correcting the draft document that's in the packet. That's why it's noted as draft. So, good catch. All right, roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
yes.
Mr. Wurstabarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. All right, moving on then to other. First is the Policy Subcommittee appointment.
Okay, so we have a board protocol and some other policies that are needing some updates. And in checking with the policy standards policy, the policy subcommittee, which would review and update and bring to the board policy improvements, it requires the supervisor, the clerk, the treasurer, the superintendent, and one trustee. So I was hoping to get a volunteer for that so we can start reviewing, starting with the board protocol.
Tim, I can make this one short. Bill called me before to let me know that he was on vacation, and he has interest in this if
I was going
Fine.
to say, he
Agree.
was on it.
Fine, yeah.
I think he was on it before.
Made the absent guy step forward. It's fine.
If
I
you
was
don't,
either-
if you-
It's either him or
if you don't
Jeremy.
have any objections, I would go ahead and nominate Mr. Palmer to this.
I'd support that.
I was going to nominate him as absent.
Okay, so there is a motion by Mr. Westerbarth and support with by Mr. Cummings to nominate Mr. Palmer to fill that fourth seat,
Yep.
correct? Fourth?
Yeah.
Yeah, fourth seat. All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Now the letter of support for the Michigan Hope Grant.
So the county applied for this the first go-round and got denied. This is the second round, and they are once again asking for a letter of support from the township.
Is it the county, like the Housing Commission that's applying for it, or the county and who's applying for it?
I believe it's the county as the county. I have only been kind of pushed these emails. They have my email address wrong at the county. So instead of sending it to my email, I had Josh actually forwarded me one and Todd forwarded the other, so.
Okay. All right. I make a motion that we authorize the submittal of the letter of support
Support?
as presented. Sorry, getting tired.
Still support that.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Richards, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Next is the CPA revisited. I believe that would be Josh's.
Yes. All right, so I had brought that up. Last year we hired the CPA, and you guys had kind of gifted that out for the year. So I wanted to bring that back to the board for review and approval again. We have had a lot of benefits with the CPA, but we were just paying an hourly rate. So I would look in there, in the memo as clarification, just to go out for RFP and set them up like all of our other contracted employees as far as reporting and pay. And an issue we do have is, unfortunately, this is the time of year when we did it, this is audit time. So I know we had issues going out for an RFP last time, and I had talked with both Tammy and Jamie about if you guys would allow us to utilize the current and then go out for RFP with all of ours, because we are starting our audit wrap-up and everything now, but we want to get a secured contract with a CPA that's in there.
Audit wrap-up? We haven't even started it yet.
Oh, yeah.
But, okay, so, but, because to do an RFP would be 4 to 6 weeks to bring somebody in, so.
We don't
Right.
have time
Yeah,
for
we
that.
don't, you don't have time for that, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have the one we're using hourly, but that was just permitted for the year. We hadn't went out for a contract. We were going to revisit. It was kind of like,
Technically, are you then looking to extend the current contract and then do a request for proposals for next year?
well, we don't have, the current contract is just hourly proposal rate.
Right.
So that's literally right now, that's been through the board, approved for myself, Jamie, and Ms. Klein to utilize the CPA, but now it's a new year, so I just, out of respect, wanted to bring it back to the board before we made any moves. It was something that's helped, I believe, all 3 of our offices, but I would like to look at that as a current fixture for the township going forward.
It would be helpful if the board could approve it till this audit's over and then go out for a formal RFP if that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's gonna happen is if we try to do an RFP now and don't have those services, then we're gonna be in the same boat we were last year.
Yeah.
Training, having somebody, a new CPA come in, just like they had to do at Straley, and be a lot more cost to get familiar with everything, where now we've got it quite streamlined and it should be a lot less money.
Well, Josh, I appreciate you bringing this up because we only had approval to the end of last year. And I understand that he's been in the offices after the first of the year. The issue I have is when I talk to Ms. Klein about the CPA services, she doesn't know when that service is in the building. She doesn't know what they're working on. She doesn't exist to that entity. So I'm all for going out for an RFP, but I would like to see the process change that the superintendent brings the recommendation to the board for approval of the AMA, but clearly that service works through the superintendent.
Yeah.
Ways the way it should. That's my opinion.
Well, that was my thought, just like all of our other contractors, that way it reports superintendent to the board.
So that doesn't answer my question for what we're doing right now. So are you asking to carry on with the same person now for the next couple months? Are you, and then going out for an RFP for future, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to continue to utilize our current CPA at an hourly rate while preparing the RFP and going out to secure on contract for 2 to 3 years at the board's approval of that. That is what's recommended through Michigan State Finance for your CPA's 2-3 year contract. So you have that chance to rotate them out, any issues, new people come in, people retiring, anything like that, just to keep it fresh. Kind of same thing we're doing with the auditors. So.
I would support that and agree to a 3-month extension to the current.
Is 3 months enough time?
Because we haven't even scheduled the audit yet, so it's gonna be pushed in June again.
I'm gonna stick with the 3 months.
How about, just throwing it out there, Steve, instead of maybe a time amount, say the 2022 process, so that he's not looking at anything new for 2023.
But we went way into September, October before we got the audit back. So I'm going to stick with the 3 months.
Would you do 3 months with a return to the board if needed?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll amend it for that.
Great. Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Westergaard. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wusterbar?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. And the next one is rehire benefit clarification. I believe that might be you as well.
That is me too, yes, ma'am. Why don't we put these together? And in the memo, I'm just seeking clarification on the benefits. We had made some adjustments through the board in bringing Ms. Hackborn back, but we did not address the time and other issues of when we were going to provide those benefits to her as a returning employee. So that is what I'm seeking today.
Okay, questions, discussion, thoughts? Don't everybody speak at once.
Well, I guess I just heard that we have to go abide by the policies, whatever we whatever we did. Is that not correct?
Well, we kind
If
of
we-
changed the
if
policy
we-
when we brought her back.
Right, we didn't bring her back like a new hire, we brought her back as a returning employee, so because the wage and everything was decided here, that's why I'm bringing it back. We have the policy would hold, as you see, to a 90-day, and that's really what I'm asking for, because we did something custom with the wage, I brought it back for the board to review and get your guidance on how you would like me to do
I
that.
think we have to abide by the policy because I heard earlier tonight, I believe, that regardless if we make a motion that supersedes our policy without the policy being updated, we're stuck with the policy. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Is that okay? Is that from the term?
So until that policy is amended either way, we have to stick with the current policy that we have.
Gotcha.
So with that, do you actually need a motion? Not, I wouldn't think so, because we're just sticking with our current policy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Which would mean she has to wait 90 days,
Right.
like a regular. Okay. Anything else from us then on that?
Nope, that's all I needed.
All right, then moving on to the Sabo Canoe Marathon ad.
So, I believe when this was brought up last year, we had needed some new pictures for this ad.
Yeah, there's,
And we have nothing with people. We have some updated photos. We did not end up getting any with people. Okay. In them. So we can either move forward with the pictures we have, or we do have the option to change up the pictures that we have. So it's going to be up to you if we just continue with this for one more year and make a point to have. So Todd just let me know that he has some pictures of kayakers on the river.
Well, I mean, which is great, but I think what we're doing is welcome to Oscoda Township. We're like talking about the paddlers, so the canoe marathon itself. So, I mean, I guess I would, think that we have a couple local paddlers that have done it year to year to year. I mean, I would think their families have probably got some pretty good pictures to at least replace that one down below, which is actually the two townships, I think, like a million years ago on that giant canoe that we raced.
Right, it's an ad though for the park.
Huh?
Like the top two, it's an ad for the park.
Right, I get that. I think the yurt is good there and stuff. I'd actually like to see some people in the yurt, just saying, but I mean, if we don't have any pictures, we don't have any pictures.
Well,
But
if the race
yeah.
photo, I'm sure I know at least one person that might have race photos.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's in the audience, and I think she's probably got some connections for a racer. But I guess that's what I'm,
Okay.
that race one. And then it would be nice if we had a yurt picture with some actual people in it.
That's what I was going. You said that last time.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I would think people have a
did-
good time there. It'd be nice to actually see them on the and I don't know if there's people. It's hard to tell that camping picture. I don't know if there's people there or not, or if that's laundry. I can't really see in this image, to be honest with you. What's the deadline for turning in the ad?
Let's see here. March 13.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like laundry hanging there with the picture with the tent. It'd just be nice to see some better pictures, but,
I'll see what I can come up with.
okay. But otherwise, I make a motion to approve the ad as, with possibly some better pictures.
Support, Sutton.
Okay, there's a motion by Richards, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried.
And just a comment that since we're talking about pictures that include people, if the people's faces are visible, you need to get
I
a
know,
model
I just had a
release.
release, yeah, I get
Model
that, yep.
release, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so, it's just,
Yep. I would think, there's a Old Orchard Park website you could maybe email out or send out some requests from local people to see if they would submit. But, all right, next on is the Oscoda Township PFAS discussion. Steve?
Thank you, Ann. What I'd like to do with this, I had it included in the board packet. I'd like the board to review it.
Okay.
I'm really just looking for us as a township to start documenting our efforts around the PFAS issue with a few bullet points here. So I'd like to postpone this till the next meeting to give everybody a chance to kind of go through it, and then we can have a proper discussion, so.
Okay, thanks. As a
Yeah.
person who requested it be in there, I appreciate that.
Yep.
So thank you. If I have any questions, I'll reach out direct.
And I'm trying
That's
to,
right.
seeing we've been here since 5, leave enough time.
Yeah,
I
gotcha.
got a 10 o'clock call I have to be honest.
Alrighty. Okay, so, do you want to make a motion then to postpone discussion?
I'll make a motion that we postpone the PFAS discussion to the next meeting.
Okay, I'll support that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. All right, that concludes our meeting agenda. Moving on to public comments. This is again the second public comment section on the agenda. You do not need to fill out a comment card for this. It does not have to be an item that's on the agenda, but you are still limited to 4 minutes. You need to come to the podium, state your name. You don't have to give your address, but where you generally reside, because Manuela from the press likes to know that. So we might know your name, but just restate it anyway. So I'm going to start on my right-hand side. If you are in that section and you would like to make public comment, raise your hand and then I'll call from there. Yes.
Hi, Kath Wynn with F&V Operations. Not really so much a public comment as the quarterly operation report was in the packet as an informational item. Just wanted to touch on a couple highlights in here in regard to the operation. We did have a lot of work that we were doing with the SRF contractor on the pump stations. There was a lot of additional effort that was put in to facilitate that project as far as coordinating lift station cleaning, working with the contractors on the actual process of operating those pumps and adjusting those pumps, following through with the row engineering and also with Rick Freeman in regard to the process of that and the progress on those items. There were a couple of water main taps that were performed, some meter pit installations for some residences that were not in the water expansion district but that want to do connect to the water system, and also for some new residences. I did talk to you already about the leak that we had, the 500,000 gallon estimated leak that we had. And then toward the end of the year, we did have sort of a surprise over the holiday weekend. On December the 23rd, we did come in for an emergency. Someone had slid off F41 into a fire hydrant over by Ken Ratliff Park. So the staff did come in and investigate and isolate that during that horrible cold windstorm on December 23rd. We did get the repair parts in and get that hydrant back into service actually on December the 29th. The total tabulation for all work orders that were completed for the township is in the packet. Total work orders, 2,406 work orders completed, 989 missed digs. And as far as meter reads that are not on automated meter reads, obviously that number has gone down over time, but we still have approximately 200 meters that are being read manually. There's an update for the maintenance allowance showing that to date there's been about $9,000 expended on that. We will be buying some spare parts and replacement parts for now the pump stations that are in, so that we have some of the spare control floats and other components that do fail, wear out over time, so that some of those are on the shelf. We also need to, as Rick had mentioned something about the force main, there was a force main break that actually occurred in January, but we expended the repair parts we had for that, so we'll be purchasing some additional repair bands for that force main so that they're available in case of any other problems. Just want to see if the board had any questions about the operations report or any comments or concerns in regard to the water and sewer operations.
Not right now, but I'm sure I will. I'll be in touch with him.
Yep, we're always happy to meet with the board and to answer any questions, and also just for the board, it's been about a year since we've met with the utility subcommittee. So if that subcommittee wants to meet with F&V and talk about performance or any issues or concerns, we'd be happy to schedule a meeting with the utility subcommittee also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kath. Sorry, and I was turning around. I didn't know if the timer was up there, and it is. So I wasn't sure of that. Okay,
And
so,
I'm very sorry, but I have to step away for a minute.
okay, all right,
Continue if you like.
okay.
I'm in the same boat, actually. We take it.
We have to end the meeting.
Huh?
We won't have a
I
quorum.
thought you said 10.
I'll stay.
Okay. All right, I think it's, yeah. All right, so we're in the middle section for public comment. Anybody in the middle section have public comment, raise your hand. Okay, I see one. Come on down, Kel. Come on down. Sorry. Every time I say that, I think of The Price is Right. Yeah. We did, and I'll probably do it again and again and again because I'm redundant in that way.
And I'll remember to
Yeah.
start the timer this time.
Oh, no, I always have a whole bunch. No, I don't have a whole bunch this time. I just had a couple questions I wanted to ask. And actually, Trustee Cummings left, which I was going to mention to him, but he'll see on the recording, I guess, about thanking him for going through the notes that I made, because I was trying to find some documents, couldn't find them, and I think it was just really valuable insight. I'm sure there's other people that have gone through the same situation. I couldn't find our code of ethics. is what I was trying to find. But one other thing is I was going through the website, and I'll just send him these notes. But I went to, we talk about the EIC website not linking over. So when I was on there, I was going through a couple of pages about the social district, and I noticed on some financial invoices, we had paid over $2,900 for the social district link on the EIC website, and then also another $2,900 for the Art Walk link on the EIC website. But they're not linked on our regular website. So I don't know that the public understands. I mean, I know you can click on EIC and then you can get to these things, but we were trying to promote them. So I just think there would be a benefit if we move them over to the main website somehow, and just, instead of keeping them separate. Also, the website for the social district says coming 2022. So I don't think that's finished. If somebody can look into that.
Okay.
I'm sure we could help promote those 3 businesses that have spent a lot of money on cups and advertising and events and stuff for the social district. So with that, and then what was the other one I had? Oh, so the other thing I wanted to mention, I went to the most recent planning and EIC meetings, and you know, it's really difficult when you're trying to read the notes, and I know they're just scribed, but wouldn't there be a benefit, and this isn't to use for any sort of interaction, but wouldn't there be a benefit just to set up a computer and have Zoom record it and make those meetings available for people to watch? We're into some really big decision-making coming up with regards to the EIC, as you heard tonight. I was at that meeting where the gentleman that presented tonight, and it was between $18,000 and $30,000 to have him help us evaluate and set up that EIC. Now, obviously, they have to go through for the specifics for Oscoda, but if I wasn't there, I mean, you'd think spending all this money on a consultant, what are we getting for it? The presentation was much more in-depth than it was today, but I just think recording these meetings, they're not at a reasonable time where people that work could attend. They're at like 4 o'clock, and I think the planning commission is at like 5 o'clock. You don't have to have them interacted. You can just use Zoom to record a meeting. I just did it with a bunch of business owners downtown talking about some events. So it's pretty easy with that. Why don't we have anyone that works for the township, if they retire or resign, why aren't there letters in the packet? We did it for quite a few people before: assistant library, zoning administrator, the assessor for retirement. So I'm just curious why those aren't in there, because I know Melinda Morgan left, and we've also had a couple other people that have left, but we didn't hear anything about those open positions. And then the last thing, when I was here last time, we had talked about getting an update on my November 7th meeting with the superintendent. So today was supposed to be the day that I would have an answer, but it wasn't on the agenda. So does anybody have an answer?
I guess I don't recall giving a date, so we'll be getting back to you.
Postpone that section. We had to postpone that section of the closed session today.
Oh,
That's
gotcha.
What, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We postponed that discussion.
The discussion about the email I sent you about the EIC
Yes.
Director of Performance and Reimbursements?
Yes.
So when are we going to have that discussion?
At a time.
Soon.
No date?
No.
Just soon?
I-
Okay.
We have several meetings coming up, and I'm guessing it's going to be at one of the ones coming up.
Okay, great. Tim, I will email you. I had a bunch of comments for you, and thank you for looking at the details on the websites.
You're welcome.
Great, anybody else in the middle section? Okay, last call. Far left. Okay, raise your hand, come on up.
Brenda Godfrey, Oscoda. Past evaluations, except one, have always been open and in the paper, so I'm not understanding why the closed session, when the board has stated in previous meetings what a good job she's been doing. There's been a couple resignation letters turned in lately that question the professionalism and leadership of the superintendent, and these letters have been left out of the board packets. One has to wonder if we are being selective. I would hope these letters were taken into consideration when doing her evaluation. Being one of these employees, I retired after 23 years and turned in a letter on December 19th. The next day, I was met at the door by the superintendent. I was to turn in my keys. I was no longer needed. That is how my letter was handled. Reading from my letter, why do we have a pair of officers spending hours of their shift in the superintendent's office hanging out? Every shift. Shouldn't they be patrolling? No one says a word. This cannot look good to the people who are seeing this go down. It is now time to fill the sergeant's position, and we all know who will get it. The officer who has passwords and access to all the computers, the officer who does IT rights job, the officer who fixes the chief's budget, the officer who has control over the cameras, the officer who set the contract up to benefit him, even taking out the written testing process for sergeant and going against the chief, the officer who spends hours in the superintendent's office. Promoting from within will only keep the department in the same sad shape it is now, with no leadership or accountability. Come work here. You can do what you want. No one tells you what to do. No structure, no leadership. You can sit around and watch a movie at 2 a.m. These are words from Oscoda officers to potential new hires. These are just a few of the many issues I've witnessed over my 23 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay.
My name is Kevin Kubik. I'm a former sergeant of the Oscoda Township Police Department. I'm not here to disrespect the board or the township in any way. But back in August 19th of 2021, I provided this township a medical slip to go on medical leave. On August 27th, 2021, I was led to the edge of the cliff and I was pushed off and I was terminated. Now in November of 2021, I filed civil suits in circuit court under the Whistleblower Protection Act. Over the next 8 months, I fought this township and battled this township in litigation through the union, in mediation, and arbitration. Now, in the end of May, no one knows this, but in May of 2022, the arbitrator awarded me my position back as sergeant of the Oscoda Township Police Department. In the beginning of June of 2022, I submitted a letter to resign from the Oscoda Township Police Department and pursued my civil suits against this township. In October of 2022, before starting those civil suits in circuit court, members of this board and I held a hearing and reached agreements and settled my suits out of court. Over the last 10 months, I've been a supervisor of 35 plus employees, and I enjoy being a leader, and I've learned a lot about leadership and management. But the thing that I am missing the most is my passion for serving the public as a police officer and a firefighter. Now, since June of 2022, I've been reviewing the board packets, and I have never seen my letter of resignation be brought before or voted on by this board. Last month, I was medically cleared after being on medical leave since August 19th of 2021 that would have prevented me from performing the full duties of a police officer and a firefighter. A couple weeks ago, I observed on MCOLS that this township is currently hiring a police officer. A couple weeks ago, I went to the township hall and I met with Mr. Sutton and received an application. And I also talked to Jane, and I talked to Nicole and several other township employees. And it felt like my home away from home, where I spent 16 years of my life, because I was a good employee and I was a great police officer, and more so, I was a great firefighter. So what I did is I went home and I filled out an application for the Oscoda Township. And what I'm here today for is I'm asking for your consideration in being offered the opportunity to serve as a police officer again and a firefighter for my township, and come back and join as part of the team of the township. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I think that was it on that. All right, so with that, that concludes our public comment section of the agenda. Sorry, I just lost my agenda. Moving on then to, thank you everybody that did public comment. Moving on to board comments. Do we have any board members that would like to make comment? I'll start at this end tonight. No? Okay.
Nothing from me.
Thanks to all you guys for putting in some hours tonight to get all this
Yeah,
done. That's,
right. Yeah, 9:19. Okay, so we had a lot of discussion this evening, some exciting things happening with the EIC. You guys are gonna have your hands full. Looking forward to getting that information back. So, thank you. There were some heartfelt, public comments made. We will be looking into those. So with that, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:20.
so moved.
Thank you.